Kia ora and welcome to another episode of Rural New Zealand. I'm your host Scotty Banford. Join me as we check out what's happening throughout Canterbury. Alrighty, on this week's episode, we bring you the 3 entries from Canterbury for the South Island Farm of the Year. First up is Ferniehurst.
Ferniehurst is 1,800 hectares, probably about 1,300 effective, and there's also a lease block which is just down the road, which doesn't join the farm, of about 330 hectares, which is also part of the family.
Having skilled and knowledgeable staff must be helpful when managing the farm.
Been here for 5 years, and Derek Kapinga, who's he's probably been here for about 13, they're very important to the operation, can't do it without them.
Yeah. And having that sort of 13 years knowledge, does that help you out with managing stuff?
It does, yeah, knows more of the nooks and crannies than I do, so it's invaluable here. Yeah. The owner's very supportive. I'm the first manager to ever be here, I suppose. It's always been a owner-operator sort of run, so it's been a privilege, and also to sort of give me enough rope to run with or hang myself with. It's been a bit of an honour too, I suppose. Yeah.
With that extra length of rope, it has given John room to try new growing options for the sheep.
Running about 5,000 Romney ewes, attempting to finish as many as possible, but obviously the last 2 years have been a bit tricky with the dry spell that we've been stuck with, but we've embraced the lucerne in quite a big way and put in 100 hectares over the last 2 years. It's been a game changer and probably helped us tremendously through the dry period. Yeah,
and you sort of see the lucerne as a major step forward for the farm?
Oh, huge, yeah, huge. Destocking areas of the farm and getting these ewes and the little lambs onto the lucerne is, we're down on stock units already because of the dry. We'd be down a lot more if we hadn't done this. And we've also been putting in brassica crops to mate the sheep on, which is been a huge benefit in lifting the scanning percentage of the ewes and also increasing that lambing percentage, and also making it a lot easier to get through the winter, which is always our sort of difficult period. Yeah. Do you produce any sort of silage and hay and like that? Oh, look, we make a bit of baleage and hay. A lot of the baleage has been surplus lucerne that's beaten us in the spring, but no, we try to be an all grass or crop system, without running the tractor around too much. I've been here for 5 years, and probably when I arrived we were consistently lambing 105% sort of thing, and we've lifted that to 140 now, which we've been doing for a couple of years, so that was one of the main sort of goals. And now the next thing is getting some lambs up to weight, or a good chunk of lambs up to weight to send to the works, which we are starting to do. We've got a very strong relationship with Silverfern Farms, going back quite a long way. So obviously we send all our beef and lamb to them, and we're also part of a supplier group, so you have a very strong commitment to just one company, and relationships are a big part of our business.
To get to the cattle, we required the Conway River, which boundaries the south and west of the farm.
Well, we're running Angus and Angus Hereford cross cows. I don't want to bang on about the drought, but that's the sort of part of the operation that suffered. So we're probably down about 3,000 stock units, and they're all cattle really. So we're running at the moment about 130 cows and about 60 in-calf heifers. So we slowly look at building that back up over the next few years. Yeah. We finish all these steers as 2-year-olds. Which is good through Silverfern Farms, and try and get them around that 300 kg carcass weight, and then try and fit them into one of the premium programs at the same time. Yeah, well, we've got a pretty close relationship with Tamania Angus, which is Richard's cousin. So that's pretty much the base of the genetics, and it's good genetics. Yeah. And that's been going on for before my era, and we'll continue to go down that road.
Yeah. And how do you think the cattle run on sort of land like this?
Oh, look, they're probably quite important here normally, and for pasture control and quality. So we'll definitely be looking to build back up the numbers to a sort of certain point.
Richard and his wife Catherine are very pleased with the hard work John has put into the farm.
We just really want the farm to progress, and we want to maintain a ewe flock, which he's getting to produce very well. And we would also like to maintain our cattle, which has been very difficult over the last couple of years with the drought, but maybe today we're starting to break out of it, so which is good. But having said that, we've learnt so much from a couple of dry years that we're going to come out of it far stronger and better, and probably ultimately it'll stand us in better stead. So, and a lot of it is due to John's diligence with the grazing and the feed options and learning about the nutrition. That lambing percentage has lifted considerably, which is very important, and the legumes, the lucernes, and he's got plans to try other ones on the hill and things. So, and it's got to be compatible with our native manukas and bush and stuff, which is very much part of Ferniehurst and the Wilding family at Ferniehurst. So.
One of the special features of the Ferniehurst farm is its native areas. Next to the homestead is one area that has been entirely fenced off to stock. This 60-acre block is home to some fantastic bird life, and it really felt like you'd stepped into the rugged west coast. With towering Kahikatea above us, it was a great example of what Canterbury bush would have looked like. With passion between the owners and manager, the future of the farm looks positive.
Well, I suppose farming's always a bit of a moving target, but I suppose our goals here are to keep increasing the livestock production, and probably trying to just get more out of what we've already got, I suppose. Better weights, and hopefully the people that buy our products off us can extract more value and pass it on to us. And that's where I see everything going. Whether or not it happens, I don't know.
Having the Conway River go around it does make it special. I mean, we've used it twice today to get to paddocks because the hill tracks are wet, so that's pretty special. The bush and farming's good fun. I mean, sheep work's hard work and it can take its toll, but it's a lovely place to live.
It's quite a unique environment with the bush, and it's not far from the closest town, which is Cheviot, or the main state highway one. But when you're standing here, it actually feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, that's quite a special environment.
That native area was certainly a highlight on the farm. Alrighty, stay tuned on Rural New Zealand, because after the break we're over the river to Mendip Hills. Welcome back to Rural New Zealand. Now, the weather wasn't that flash when we visited Mendip Hills, but that doesn't mean it wasn't an amazing farm.
I'm Simon Lee, and I've been managing Meander Hills for 10 years this December. Meander Hills is owned by the Black family, and they've owned it since the mid-50s. Mendip is 6,100 hectares. We've got a wee support block down in Spotswood, 12 k's away, which is 150 hectares irrigated, or 180 hectares total. Then we've got another block in Ashburton, which is 150 hectares irrigated. So Mendip's, it's all, we've got 180 hectares of dead flat. Then we've got rolling tractor country of about 2,000 hectares, and the balance is sort of tussock Managari hill country or Manuka, and then sort of higher country, and we run to about 1,050 metres. The flats down here around these sheds here were 180 metres above sea level. We're running 34,000 stock units on this property here, and the other finishing farms are running anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 stock units at one time. So we're sheep, beef and deer, breeding and finishing. At Mendip here we run 1,200 breeding cows, and the majority of them are Hereford, so 70% straight Hereford, and the balance are Angus or Angus Hereford cross. And we fatten all the progeny from the cattle between Mendip and our finishing block down at Spotswood and Irrigation, or our finishing block down in Ashburton. We've just started, and we're 2 years into it, a genetics trial for beef and lamb. It's a 6-year project using different Hereford, Angus and Charolais genetics and we've AI'd out of our cow herd, we've AI'd 525 synchronised program, using as many different genetics as we can to try and see the different growth and EBV estimates within those with those traits of those cattle that have been bred. We want to try and explore everything and try and get as much information out there to the New Zealand farmer as we can on the different genetics we're using. So there's probably about 15 different sires we're using every season, but then every season we AI we're using different ones again. So we just keep rolling on. Yeah, and do a lot of monitoring of the stocks, a lot of weighing, a lot of condition scoring, obviously DNA, reproductive for the heifer side of it, everything right through till they're calving, and then all the finished steer is killed. The likes of these cattle here, these are first calving AI Herefords that are calving on these paddocks here. Most of our cows, well, all of our cows except for our first calvers, are calved on the hill. Underneath the ewes, set stocked on the hill. All the cows are wintered on our higher country, which is saved up over the summer. So that they're all wintered off their own backs on saved summer autumn pasture. We don't use a lot of supplementary feeding for our breeding cows. And saying that, we've had to in the last 2 or so years with the drought.
Having deer on the farm is another part of improving the farming operation.
So the deer at Meander, we've got 2 wee deer farms. At the moment we're standing on the 64 hectares of sort of where we grow out the young stock. So the likes of these deer here, these are just about yearling hinds that have just come off fodder beat onto grass. And they stay here until they're first mated, scanned and calf, and then they make the 8k journey up to the next deer farm on their hill country to calve, and they stay up there for the rest of their life. So then the other unit up there is 880 hectares. We run 1,280 hinds, breeding hinds, mixed age hinds up on that hill. So all those deer stay up there. It's sort of minimal inputs. We have to use the helicopter to get them in. They come in twice a year, once for weaning, once for TB testing / set stocking for the next fawning. No supplementary feed added into it. There's sort of a low stocking rate, and we sort of add cows into the system when need be. So we wean them straight off there. Hind fawns down to this block here, and all the stag fawns go straight off the hill and head straight to our deer finishing unit down in Ashburton.
And where do you sort of see the future of deer? Like, it's been sort of doom and gloom for a while, but you sort of feel like it's picking up again?
Yep, no, we're right into the deer thing. So our goal for Mendip is to get into 2,000 hinds. That's our goal. So at the moment, in the next month, we're fencing another 10 k's of hill country opposite the deer shed, which will bring in another 90 hectares. So that 90 hectares, well, potentially for us at our stocking rate, where we can add cattle and sheep back into the system as well, without it being a totally deer unit, would potentially is probably going to bring us another 200 hinds, and that country is actually in Lucerne at the moment, so we're just going to try a few different things with lactating hinds on that as well. But that is the goal. So we will keep fencing, and we like the deer. It fits our system well because the deer work is we're lambing, calving, and then the deer work comes on straight after that, and it suits our growth curve on that higher hill with when the lactating hind starts in the say the 1st of November, and that country up there it's not high, but it sort of averages about 580 metres, and it would usually only be at scrubby tussocky country, and it would only really suit probably potentially single ewes lambing, and we've changed it into venison production, and we see the future really good, and we're expanding.
Before Simon arrived on the Mendip farm, sheep numbers were higher and it was even a different breed.
Here we run 10,400 Romney ewes. 10 years ago when I came here, they were all Corriedale ewes. We used to have 11,200. I've just peeled it back a wee bit. Started crossbreeding. I use my Romney rams or genetics from the North Island. We started crossbreeding and then keeping all our better Romney Corriedale cross lambs, and we've just bred through like that. And obviously our older 5-year-old ewes have still got a touch of Corriedale through them. So as we started breeding our Corriedale out, we started putting our terminal sires over our Corriedale cross ewes and breeding just from our better Romney, percentage of genetics lambs, and we've gone through like that. So we've had an increase in percentage. We've sort of gone from 90% lambing, and we're sitting at about 142% of the ram now. Body conditions gone up quite a bit, and scanning percentages as well. We fatten all our lambs between Meander Hills, our Spotswood irrigated block, and also our Ashburton one, and we also buy in lambs as well if things go well and lambs go out quickly and the season permits, really. All the ewes are just grass wintered on the hill and rotations. Same thing again. In the last 2 years we've had to supplementary feed our sheep quite a bit. Young stock are growing out on turnips or rape and grass as a two-tooth, and then as far as culling as well, our terminal flock is usually made up of not only the Corriedale genetics, but our off-type sheep. Just trying to breed, because we've had gone through a breed change. It's been quite hard to try and get a sheep that we like, but we're getting there now.
Yeah,
we're tailing 4,000 more lambs now than we were with 800 more ewes, and that's sort of been the main driver. And the main driver now is trying to get as more lambs off mum. On our 10th of December weaning draft last year was 24% lambs out of our sale lambs went prime. But I'd love to be 28 to 30%. That would be my ultimate goal off this hill country.
With having a large-scale operation, staff must be a huge part of it.
We've got 8 staff. There's 8 of us, including me. Sorry. You staff for everything, and you're only as good as your staff, and how you either treat them or provide the right tools for the job and a good work environment. And I like seeing and working with younger staff and older staff, and seeing them progress and build their skill levels up, and head on to a better job in the agricultural industry as a career.
The future of Mendip Hills Station looks positive.
I can probably speak for the family, and so I've known them well enough now that I would think that it's here to under their guardianship. It's here to stay. They love the place, and they enjoy coming up here and being involved and not knowing what's going on and with the changes and development, and they know what happened when. Even if it was 20 years ago, they know the milestones of the place, and I think it's a good future for the black family and for the people that are working for them as well.
Simon and his team came away with the Human Resources Award. Well done, guys. Alrighty, stay tuned, because after the break, we're down to Fili, where we meet the winners of the 2016 South Island Farm of the Year. Welcome back to rural New Zealand. Now, Neil and Lynn are a hard-working couple down in Fili, and they made some simple changes on their farm for the better. Lynn and Neil Campbell have been farming up the road from Fili for over 20 years.
520 hectares we bought in 1993, and then 10 years later in 2003 we bought an adjoining 240 hectares. So that addition gave us a really good balance. Where we are standing now is quite high altitude country, going up to 600 metres way over there.
and so it wasn't a well-balanced farm before. Good summer country, but not so good in the winter. Bit of snow risk and what have you. So the additional 240 hectares we got are in the valley, Middle Valley itself, and it's really made this farm what it is and opened up a whole lot of different options for us. Yeah.
By having more options, this gives the Campbells more avenues to pursue on the farm.
It's our point of difference and why we're entering this competition. People say, what do you farm? And I actually say we grow protein to produce protein. And we can farm anything here. We've geared ourselves up now. We've got 80 hectares of arable crops. We run a venison herd. We do dairy support with heifers and a small number of sheep. And I guess we have trading cattle, which is our escape valve in times of adverse climate, and they come and go as seasons dictate. But just talking about the deer, we're on this high altitude country, and when we introduced the deer onto the farm in the late 90s, it really it just fitted like a glove, because the hinds they breed late, November, December fawning, so their feed demand is quite different, and so those hinds are really suited to this high altitude country where we are now, and so yeah, it's been a process of refinement to get to where we have today with what we run and how much.
Growing deer and producing venison is the main focus for the Campbells.
Behind us is our breeding hinds, which we run about 500 of, and they've just come off fodder beet, which is, I talked about their different feed demand from the other classes of animal. So they've been on fodder beet now all winter until the second week of October, and we started to kill last year's crop. So as they're coming off, they're making room for the hinds, and they'll be spread out in the next fortnight, ready for fawning. We've concentrated entirely on venison production, and it's quite good this year. So there's some really exciting things happening genetically with venison. Traditionally, most of the focus on deer breeding had been on velvet genetics, and great gains can be made in velvet because you're selecting purely just on that one trait. But now we're getting some really good work. Some breeders are doing some really good work on venison and on the weaning weight of the fawn, and then that consequently gives you a heavier fawn in the autumn when you wean, and then you've got more chance of hitting the premium chilled spring market, which finishes about the end of October, early November, for shipping to Europe. So we aim to get as many animals away as we can in that period, early spring, up till about the first week of November. And with what's happening genetically, it's really exciting. We're going to be able to get more animals away, heavier, in that peak kill period. We're just exciting. The future's pretty exciting.
Another aspect to the farm is supplying grazing for the local dairy farmers.
These are dairy heifers that we're grazing for replacements for dairy farmers, and it's been part of our business now for 6 or 7 years. It's a very reputation-based business, so we're aiming for optimum performance and get them to the live weights that the dairy farmers require, particularly pre-mating. And I guess grazing somebody else's livestock, I feel a greater onus than if they were mine. I feel it's a real responsibility to get them what the client's always right. So you're trying to please the client, and that in this case it's the dairy farmer. So we put a fair emphasis on reaching target live weights. Our grazing system that we're using here is a wee bit unique for this class of country, in that we have the farm all divided up into cells, and the greatest cell's probably 2 hectares, so they're on regular shifts, maximum of 2 days per cell, and so we're trying to maximise the amount of grass we grow, the live weight gain of the animals, and obviously kilograms of meat or live weight gain per hectare. And by what we've done through electric fencing, we were able to achieve that. I guess I've always looked upon our traditional dairy farmers as the best growers and utilisers of grass in New Zealand, and so we're trying to emulate their system and grow the greatest amount of grass for the greatest amount of product. One of the things we did a few years ago was a SWOT analysis of this farm: strengths, weaknesses and threats, and all the talk of climate change and what have you, and more extreme weather patterns, and obviously droughts are part of that. And so we looked at this farm as a total, and we had some tremendous soils, particularly in the valley, some Claremont silt loams, which were basically growing grass for livestock, which I didn't think was the best utilisation of it, because it still needed regular rainfall to grow grass. So we basically started some arable cropping, autumn sowing of arable crops, and really protecting us against those extreme summer events. And by autumn sowing we've managed to achieve some pretty consistent yields with wheat, barley, oilseed rape, and we're growing some oats for seed this year. So it's really given us probably some insulation against drought, and a side benefit of grain for your own use, and straw as well to be fed to livestock. So you can see there's oilseed rape there in the background, and I talked before about the neighbouring property we bought in 2003, and this is basically all it underneath us here. So it is much more summer dry than where we've been, where we started, but nowhere near as snow prone. So we make sure we have a percentage of winter brassicas, fodder beet and what have you down on the valley floor here, and it's relatively quickly cleared of snow. A few sheep in the background, they're still part of the mix. At one stage this farm had 3,500 sheep breeding ewes, and we're down to 600, just going to a terminal sire. My accountant tells me I've only got them for sentiment, but as the numbers went down, their per head performance went up, and they're still here and tidy up round the lanes and do contribute. As their per head production's gone up, they still do contribute, and they're another class of livestock that can give us some flexibility in the terms of adverse events. So we can unload them, just buying in replacements and mating to a terminal sire. You can shift them in a hurry.
With lush green paddocks, not a breath of wind in the air, and fresh snow on the Alps, it seemed like we were in a special little part of the world.
It's an amazing place to live. I mean, if you look around and see the views, we're extremely lucky to live here. I love the diversity, the different stock classes, and the actual community around here is absolutely brilliant. We really enjoy living here.
Yeah. Is there any animals in particular like growing on the farm?
Well, Neil's quite passionate about deer, and even though I don't get in and help him at all with them, I love watching the deer, and they're really interesting.
And I guess this is our piece of paradise, our farm, our business.
Well, thanks for joining us today on Rural New Zealand. I certainly hope you enjoyed the show. Just remember, give us a like on Facebook, and if you're silly enough to miss an episode, you can watch it on demand. Catch you guys next year when you enter the South Island Farm of the Year. See you then.